northeast of Jerusalem. He was unmarried as a sign of the harsh judgment that God was bringing to correct Israel in their rebellion. They were into idol worship. They were into deception and idolatry and tyranny. You say, man, it's so hard now. I wish we could go back to the old days. Really? How about these days when the people were so far from God that they were taking their little children and burning them in the fire and offering them to Molech? God's people were doing this. They were, don't ever say to yourself, it's so far gone, it's never coming back. And so for 5 decades, Jeremiah ministered from 627 beyond the Babylonian captivity to about 570 BC. He's called the weeping prophet. He saw no revival, no converts to speak of. At the time of Jeremiah 33:3, he was in prison, as I said, no doubt perplexed, confused. Here it is, unable to understand why God had allowed what he had allowed. Now, I just can't make it any clearer to you than this. If you're here today and something is going on in your life and you're drawing a dotted line to God and saying, if God really is, then why X? The answer to that is prayer, okay? God says, call to me in that moment, and I will tell you great things you don't know. Here's an awesome thing to pray about. It doesn't matter if you're going through a heartbreak in ministry or in your family or in your career or wherever it showed up. That is prime time to go to God and say, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it. Why would you allow us to go through this? Now, that answer is not necessarily coming from Scripture. I can't take you to a passage to tell you it's coming from a friend. But insight to help you understand what's happening and why comes through prayer. And the reason why we're so often perplexed and frustrated and bitter and defeated, God forgive us, is because of our prayerlessness. Call to me, and I will tell you great things you have not known. Jot these 3 enemies these are the big 3 enemies of prayer in my life. Things that keep me from praying. Number 1, anger. When I'm angry, I don't pray. Or maybe I'm angry because I what? Didn't pray. Anger is, this shouldn't be like this. I don't accept this situation. I'm not good with this. And anger is, it can be a righteous, but often it's an unrighteous response to circumstance. Anger is an enemy of prayer. Fear. Will God really come through? Is he trustworthy? Is this really going to work out? I can't see it. I'm afraid it isn't. I want to believe it is, but I'm afraid it never will be. And so I don't pray. And I'm afraid. Anger, fear, doubt. Less so for me after many years, but at times past and certainly possible. And I think many of you, is God really good? Is he really listening? Is this really real? And I remember those days very vividly, and we're all prone at various times to have doubts. It's such an enemy of prayer. Into each of these dark nights of the soul, anger, fear, and doubt, God lovingly steps with inspiration to tell us things that we have not known. Now, everyone look up here for a minute, and I'm just going to, by faith, imagine all the people on the other campuses listening to me too. Let me just say this. What great perplexity is anchoring your soul that God would answer you through prayer? What is it? What is it? What great perplexity anchors your soul because you have not heard the great hidden thing? Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great things you have not known, and you sit here today and you don't know what it is. You don't know the great thing because you haven't called out to him. I know it's true because I was that person. There are many people here who have never really knelt down and prayed out loud. There are many people here who have never prostrated themselves before the Lord. Never, not one time. But you've had things that should have pushed you to that, but you went in a different direction. There are many people listening right now who have never raised their voice and cried out to God in prayer. Your score in that category would be 0. And do I say that to shame you? Do I? Why do I say it? To encourage you, to motivate you, to cause you to see that this great, vast field of harvest lies before you and you skirt around its provision. When you should walk out into that field and make yourself hoarse and spend your strength in prayer and watch God do something awesome and tell you something great that you have not known. I'll say it again. Kathy and I have our 28th anniversary at the end of this month. The greatest things that have happened in our marriage are great answers to prayer. We talked about it today. We have seen some great answers to prayer. Many of them I've talked about through the years. I don't want us to be the focus. But we know what we're speaking of. Some of the greatest and most intimate moments of marriage. I can remember nights in bed when I was so distraught with my back turned to my wife and trying to get sleep that eluded me and feeling a hand on my shoulder and say, let me just pray for you right now. And turning to the Lord in prayer and peace coming and giving that burden to God. The burdens we carry that grieve the heart of God because we won't call out to him. Notice the inspiration, and I will tell you great things you have not known. And then, I love this, illumination. Great things may be things that other people see, but I can't see it. Illumination are things that no one can see but me and God. Notice there, hidden things. Some translations have mighty things. NIV says unsearchable things. The Hebrew term is used of fortified cities that were inaccessible and unassailable. God knows things about our circumstances. Great things, mighty things, hidden things. This is one of the greatest blessings of prayer. God tells us things. Go to God about that person. God tells us why people are the way they are. God tells us why certain things had to happen as they did. God tells us what good is being accomplished that we can't see. God tells us how the future will be better, even though it seems impossible now. Hidden things. Can't you be more specific? No, I cannot, because I don't know what they are. Isn't it awesome to think that God has some hidden things for you? Don't you want the hidden things? How awesome to know something that only you and God know. And you found it out in prayer, and he gave it to your heart, and it made all the difference. Call to me, and I will answer you. We'll tell you great and hidden things that you have not known. You don't learn those things in college. You learn them through prayer. You don't learn those things in small group or even at church. You learn them in prayer. You don't learn these things in books from your favorite Bible teacher or scholar. You don't even learn these things in experience or through time. You learn them in prayer. What do I not know that I could know if I was more faithful in prayer? Now listen, loved ones. This is the great secret of whatever God is doing here at our church. This has been a church of praying people, and it must always be so. I can think of times when this whole room was filled with people calling out to God. I can't even count the times that's happened here. Hours and hours of prayer. I could take you back into the room over here where Kathy and I came so many times at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning and met in a circle of people and called out to God for our church and for so many of you that we didn't even know at the time. So many times and in so many places, in our small groups, all over this great city, people calling out to God in prayer. Now, we will never exceed our prayer cover as a church. Prayer is what brings the glory down. If we want God to show up at church and save our family and reach our neighbors and heal our bodies and restore our marriages, we have to ask Him. Nothing will substitute for that. You can't fake it. You can't phone it in. You can't delegate it to somebody else. We must be a praying people.